Welcome to Silent Screams, where shadows whisper and darkness finds its voice. Tonight, we delve into the unsettling depths of the unknown. The stories we share are not for the faint of heart, so dim the lights, silence your surroundings, and let the terror unfold. It all began on a cold, unassuming Black Friday night. The world outside buzzed with excitement. Crowds flooded stores, eager to grab the best deals. But for Sarah, a 27-year-old freelance graphic designer, the night had an entirely different purpose. Sarah wasn't out battling the hordes for discounted TVs or gadgets. She was home, cozy on her couch, scrolling through Reddit. Her favorite subreddit, r/Nosleep, had been unusually active that evening. Post after post seemed darker, more disturbing, as if the writers were channeling something otherworldly. She clicked on a thread titled, "If you're reading this, it's already too late." The first line caught her breath. The moment you begin reading, it knows. Sarah chuckled nervously, brushing off the eerie warning as a clever hook. The post described a being called the Watcher, a shadowy entity that supposedly lingered in the periphery of one's vision, growing closer with every second spent reading its tale. The author warned readers to stop immediately, but curiosity gripped Sarah like a vice. She read on. The story detailed strange occurrences, flickering lights, cold drafts in warm rooms, and inexplicable whispers in the dead of night. As Sarah scrolled further, she noticed something unsettling, a faint reflection in her laptop screen. At first, it seemed like her own shadow, distorted by the glow of the screen. But the longer she stared, the more it seemed wrong. It didn't move as she did. It lingered, just behind her. A loud crash echoed from the kitchen, breaking her trance. Sarah jumped, heart pounding. She sat frozen, straining to hear any further sounds. Seconds stretched into eternity, and then came the faintest creak of a floorboard. Her stomach sank. She lived alone. Slowly, she stood, every instinct screaming at her to stay put. She crept toward the kitchen, the dim light from her laptop casting long, eerie shadows. The kitchen was empty, or so it seemed. The window above the sink was slightly ajar, letting in a chilling breeze. Sarah was certain she had closed it earlier. She shut it quickly and locked it, her fingers trembling. As she turned to leave, she noticed a single glass sitting on the counter. It was one of those small details that shouldn't have mattered, but it sent a shiver down her spine. She didn't remember taking it out. Returning to the living room, Sarah found her laptop screen had gone black. The once vibrant glow of her Reddit feed was now replaced with a reflection of her own pale face. She tapped the touchpad, and the screen came back to life, but the subreddit was gone. In its place was a blank text file with the words, "You shouldn't have read it." Her pulse quickened. She deleted the file and tried refreshing her browser, but the message returned, no matter what she did. Then came the sound of footsteps, soft, deliberate, and impossibly close. Sarah spun around, expecting to see someone standing there, but the room was empty. The silence was deafening. She could feel her pulse in her ears as a cold sweat dampened her brow. The footsteps started again, this time ascending the staircase to her bedroom. Each creak of the wood felt like a hammer to her chest. She stared at the staircase, paralyzed by fear. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, shattering the silence. She grabbed it, desperate for a distraction. The screen lit up with a message from an unknown number. "It's watching." Sarah dropped the phone as if it had burned her. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone was pulling a prank. Maybe it was just a coincidence. But deep down, she knew better. The footsteps had stopped. The house was silent again, oppressively so. She considered running outside, but where would she go? Her car keys were upstairs, in the bedroom, and the thought of going up there was unbearable. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging the house into momentary darkness. When they came back on, the air felt heavier, thicker, like the atmosphere before a storm. Sarah could hear faint whispering, barely audible, like voices carried on a distant wind. She couldn't make out the words, but they filled her with an overwhelming sense of dread. Then, she saw it. A shadow moved across the far wall, slow and deliberate. It was tall, impossibly tall, with limbs that stretched unnaturally. It didn't belong to anything in the room. Sarah's breath hitched as she realized it was coming from the staircase, descending toward her. The shadow grew darker, more defined with every step, though no physical form followed. She grabbed the nearest object, a ceramic mug, and hurled it at the shadow. It shattered against the wall, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silence. The shadow didn't flinch. Instead, it paused, as if acknowledging her presence for the first time. The whispering grew louder, overlapping voices that seemed to come from all directions. In desperation, Sarah bolted for the door. Her hands fumbled with the lock, trembling so badly that it took 3 tries to undo it. Just as she flung the door open, the lights flickered again, and she swore she felt something cold brush against her shoulder. She didn't look back. She sprinted into the night, barefoot and shaking, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The streets were eerily empty for Black Friday. No cars, no bustling shoppers, just an oppressive silence broken only by her pounding footsteps. Sarah ran until her legs burned and her lungs screamed for air. She stopped under a street lamp, its orange glow flickering faintly. She turned back, half expecting to see the shadow following her, but the street was empty. As she tried to catch her breath, her phone buzzed again. Reluctantly, she pulled it from her pocket. Another message from the same unknown number: "You can't run forever."